Kings Pacers tonight in Gainbridge Fieldhouse. What would have been the huge revenge game of the season is a little less with Domantas Sabonis not playing, but Tyrese Haliburton and Buddy Hield against their former team, Justin Holiday and Jeremy Lamb against their former team. Matt George from Locked On Kings is going to talk about the Kings' perspective and preview all the action on Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers as always. My name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and the West Side Community News, and today it is the heated return of the Kings to Indianapolis, where Domantas Sabonis' team will come to Indy. Jeremy Lamb back in Indy, Justin Holiday back in Indy to play against Tyrese Haliburton and Buddy Hield, two former Kings. It's going to be a very fun game full of fun storylines. Unfortunately, Sabonis will not be playing, will not even travel with the Kings to Indy, but it's going to be an awesome game to preview. So many fun storylines and two teams that will really care about playing against some former teammates or some former players on their team, or that's the same thing, or playing against their own former team. So I'm really looking forward to it. Matt's really looking forward to it. Matt George from Locked On Kings stops by. We're going to talk all about the game, the storylines, the players involved, who's going to win, what it means for the inverse standings battle. All in today's Locked On Pacers podcast. Let's bring in Matt George and get right to it. Locked On crossover time ahead of what is the most anticipated game of the year for the rest of the season for the Pacers and Kings, which is really depressing to say, but as two teams that are out of the playoff race, playing against each other at this point in the season is fascinating because it is the first time that Buddy Hield and Tyrese Haliburton will go against their former team. The Pacers will see Justin Holiday and Jeremy Lamb again. Sabonis will not be in the building, unfortunately, to make it a true battle. But catching up on old Pacers and old Kings, I think, is the way to talk about this game. And, of course, joining me to talk about that, Matt George from Locked On Kings is here. Matt, how you doing, man?
I'm good. It feels like we've been robbed truly of the – or maybe, I guess the best way to put it, let's say that the true battle of the Kings versus Pacers post-trade edition has been delayed to next season, as this is a date that I've had circled on my calendar since that trade went down. I expect fully a Tyrese Haliburton revenge narrative, but I expected the Kings to go into Indiana, bringing their new group, especially Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox, that pairing together with them, and it's highly likely that neither of them are going to be playing. So, surprise, surprise. Unfortunately, things are delayed a little bit, but, you know, there's still reasons to pay attention.
The Pacers side of the revenge will happen in Gainbridge. Hopefully next year the first game is in Sacramento so that Sabonis can play. It's only fair that Sabonis gets his revenge game on his home floor after how this has fizzled out. I am really bummed we're not going to get all six guys from the trade versus each other. You know, Thompson's obviously in Chicago now, so it's a little different, but just for the full effect of the revenge part of this. But I don't honestly know what kind of to expect because, you know, we'll talk about the Pacers guys first, but, you know, Buddy Hield got here and he was like, I'm thrilled to be in a new situation and is playing kind of well for the Pacers. And I don't know how long that's going to last based on all the Kings fans' analysis of Buddy Hield, but so far so good. And Haliburton was like, man, I was stunned. I was dealt. So I'm curious how they'll feel about this game and how they'll play against the Kings.
You know, with Buddy Hield specifically, and we'll talk about him more, I'm sure, I'm just interested to see the fact that his numbers are up across the board except for shooting. Like 3-point shooting wise, It's down to 32%, which is fitting, but his assists, his rebounds, his turnovers, those numbers are all up across the board. His scoring is up from like 15 to 18 points per game. So, I mean, you know how I feel about Buddy, and I think some of your listeners know how I feel about Buddy based off the last few conversations that I had. Locked On Kings listeners know exactly how I feel about Buddy Hield. So there's an evil part of me that wants to see a classic Kings Buddy Hield performance in this game here. But overall, like, I'm expecting the Kings to get absolutely torched by Tyrese Haliburton in this game. That doesn't necessarily mean that the Pacers are going to win. Although at this point in time, based off of the Tankathon draft lottery standings, the Kings wouldn't mind a loss too much either, I think, especially with Fox and Sabonis out.
Yeah, it's the biggest game for tanking purposes, I think, for both teams the rest of the season, ironically. And it's weird because when I thought Sabonis was going to play, you know, pretty much in the middle of the Suns game onward, you know, I don't think either. This was probably like the last game where you'd see like I guess, but the Pacers are going to try every game the rest of the season. But like the full, like, let's go, let's smash another team kind of effort from both teams. Maybe the Pacers will keep going for it, but they just sat a guy for rest for the first time over the weekend. Like, they're headed to where they know they need to be. So I thought this was like the last game that would happen. Without Sabonis, we'll see. But I still think that revenge factor will be there for Haliburton and Hield, certainly. And Buddy, yeah, you brought him up first. I mean, I'm just curious how he'll handle it. Like, the last time he had a revenge game, that Sacramento New Orleans game when he was a rookie, he played pretty well for the Kings. I dug up the old numbers to figure it out. So certainly something personal for him. And I know he likes being in a situation where his role is maybe a little more defined for now. But again, we'll see how it lasts as the team evolves going forward. But so far, so good. And I feel like of the two, he's the one that's more likely to try to like go over his normal production and like make it a point of like, I can't believe you traded me. Like Haliburton obviously felt slighted by the deal, but he doesn't seem like a guy who would like really bend or change the way he plays to try to change the game in his own way. Whereas I feel like Buddy Hield could be a guy who's like, I want to score 30 points so bad against my old team.
Yeah, I partially agree with that. I believe Tyrese is going to want to make the Kings regret this decision
I agree
immediately
with
if
that.
they don't already. But I agree with you in the sense that I don't think he's going to change the way that he plays in order to do that. Tyrese is just going to be the player that he and so many in the league expect him to be when he reaches his prime. Like that's the kind of effort I expect from Tyrese out of this game, to where he's not only going to torch the Kings in the scoring column, he's going to torch the Kings in the passing lanes. Like I'm fully expecting a Tyrese Haliburton level of double-double, certainly surpassing 10 assists, assuming his teammates can actually hit a shot. And then the scoring will fall in tow with that. So, but Buddy, full transparency, like as much as Buddy has frustrated the hell out of me and many Kings fans, like Buddy has the capability of going supernova any given night. So if there is someone to predict having just a ridiculous box score that people around the NBA who don't watch this game are going to talk about the next day, it's Buddy Hield. Because, I mean, Buddy is capable of dropping 30 easy. Buddy is capable of going for 40 if he's on one. He's certainly going to try for it. And I think him trying for it actually works more in the Kings' favor, just based off of how trigger happy he can be normally when he's not trying to put up numbers like that. So, look, I fully expect both guys to be aggressive. I expect Tyrese to be cerebral and Buddy to just be Buddy Hield in the greatest and worst of ways. And let me tell you, like Kings fans with the natural pessimism that we have after 15 seasons of garbage, everybody here in Sacramento is expecting both of those guys to look like God's gift to basketball against the Kings.
The Bulls play Tuesday night and then don't play till Thursday night. Maybe Tristan Thompson could fly in and like be in the crowd or something. Why not?
Why not?
What about, Haliburton and Hield are both playing more here and getting more shots up per game here. So like comparing their numbers isn't fair. Like their role is different with the Pacers and the Kings. That said, in the glimpses you've caught of them with Indiana or in the games you've watched, whatever, what have you noticed anything different about the way they're playing? Have you been surprised by anything that they've been doing since they got traded from Sacramento to Indiana? And I will ask you the same question in reverse with the Pacers guys in Sacramento.
Yeah, when it comes to Tyrese, I'm not surprised to see, and I think I've seen you, Tony, tweet about it a couple times, although it looks like it's gotten a little bit better, and it has to have gotten better with him being a number one guy now. But it looks like there's still the frustrations of, okay, Tyrese, shoot the ball a little bit more. Like,
Yes,
and that doesn't, I mean, it both surprises me and doesn't surprise me. Although I do think he's in a better situation to work through that, because he has to kind of work through that. So I've been surprised that Tyrese has not gone into takeover mode more there in Indiana. But also, I know that's who Tyrese is as a player. Like Tyrese is not the guy that's going to say, give me the ball and get out of my way. Like maybe if strategically it's a good play, he'll take that route. But Tyrese has never been an isolation player. So I'm happy to see, in the sense that Tyrese is not changing who he is now that he's in this scenario and just saying, okay, this is my team now, I'm getting mine. Like I'm glad to see Tyrese is authentic to his basketball brand, and I think long term that's going to work out for him. That being said, the Kings need him to shoot the ball, or rather, the Pacers need him to shoot the ball more any team would need him to shoot the ball more than he has. And that's been a criticism of his really throughout his entire basketball career, not just in his time in the NBA, his couple seasons in the NBA. With Buddy Hield, I mean, I already mentioned it earlier. Like, I'm surprised to see what numbers are up and what numbers are down. I'm glad to see that his volume of 3-point shooting is not down, because that's just who Buddy Hield is. Now, if he had gone to Indiana and suddenly was shooting only 6 or 5 3-pointers a game, I'd be wondering what in the world the Pacers are doing and how they hypnotized him to stop shooting the ball as much as he does. But if you're getting at least a little more production out of Buddy outside of just shooting the basketball, it's a bonus. Now, I also don't think it's a surprise that he's putting up those numbers at the end of a season on a bad team, which I don't think is offensive to say, because we all know the Kings are a bad team too. So it would be different to me if Buddy was putting up those numbers as a contributor on a really good team, which the Pacers are not there yet. And then I am surprised to see how both guys have been kind of dominant in minutes played. Like, every time I look at an Indiana Pacers box score, I seem to see I seem to see Haliburton and Buddy towards the top in minutes played. And I've seen both of them, especially Buddy, I've seen leading the team in over 40 minutes played a number of times. That is a little confusing to me with Rick Carlisle, but I mean, what the hell do I know?
Well, so he is playing a lot. A lot of that is that they have like 8 or 9 available players every night right now. So they're just like, well, we gotta play somebody, I guess. So he is the guy because he can play 2 and 3. They're like, all right, you're a wing. Congrats, get out there. With Haliburton, the funny thing is, I want to ask you about this. If he was like this with the Kings, like, even those games where he doesn't shoot enough, he knows. And after the game, he goes, oh, I got to be more aggressive. And yeah, you're right. Okay. And then he'll go, it'll be better for a few games. Then it'll happen again, like 5 games later. And he'll say it again. It's like, okay, he gets it and he knows he needs to fix it, but still sometimes it just doesn't all click. That he needs to get one more dribble towards the basket and try to shoot a few more times a game. It's so interesting to me. I want to figure out and maybe ask him, like, do you have a pattern and know in your head, like, what causes that to happen every so often? Because that's been what's so fascinating about that aspect to me.
And what's interesting too, another layer to that is it's not that he's afraid to shoot the basketball, because you see in big moments, and I don't know how many big moments he's had in Indiana, but certainly in Sacramento in the fourth quarter when the Kings needed a big 3, he'll take that shot if he thinks it's the right shot. I think that's the big deal there, is maybe it's just going to take more time with him at the NBA game. Not that he's not already playing at an NBA level right now, but maybe as he continues to figure out the NBA game and understand that he doesn't have to pick and choose his spots so cerebrally as a best player. Like, if you're a role player, you kind of have to pick and choose your spots. Tyrese is not a role player. He wasn't with the Kings. He's certainly not now with the Indiana Pacers. So it's recognizing, hey, you can shoot a higher volume of threes without taking bad shots. And it's very rare if Tyrese Haliburton, in fact, I can't think of a single time in his time with the Sacramento Kings where Tyrese took a bad shot. So it's finding out for him how to take a higher volume without getting into bad shot land. And I think that's going to be something that he's able to figure out as time goes on. But it's confusing considering he knows when he needs it to take a big shot, he will take it and he doesn't shy away from it. It's a very different situation compared to a lot of young players who either come in and shoot too much and just shoot terribly, or are terrified to shoot the basketball.
I agree. It's very unique and interesting, like so many things about Tyrese Haliburton. And I'm looking forward to seeing how he takes this game, how Buddy Hield takes this game, and really how every Pacer, without Sabonis, it's a little different, but just how they handle playing against Justin Holiday and Jeremy Lamb. And on the flip side, the Kings get, like, this game is more than just these 5 guys. Obviously, for them, it's a little different because they're actually playing, or 4 guys. But the rest of the players were involved in this stuff too. So I want to flip to the Kings side now, Matt. But before I do that, let's talk about the good people over at PrizePicks. Are you looking for a daily fantasy option for the NBA? Then you've got to try the award-winning app PrizePicks. They make daily fantasy made easy. I love it. Matt loves it. We know you will too. It's super easy to use. You pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections. You can win up to 10 times on any entry. It's just you versus the projected numbers. You can make the entries in 60 seconds or less. It's safe and offers fast withdrawals. And they have an award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. Any prop you can think of, they've got it. Points, rebounds, steals, blocks, you name it, it's there. They allow mixed sport entries. It's not just NBA. They got MLB, NFL, soccer, MMA on there. So for a limited time, PrizePicks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer. For all of our listeners, users get $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point. All you got to do when you sign up is use the code NBA. That's right, exclusive offer for Locked On fans. Sign up today and get a free $50 if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. To the Kings side we go, Mr. George. How has Domantas Sabonis looked on a new team? I've caught a lot of Sabonis with the Kings, and I very much enjoyed him playing with Fox, and I enjoyed him getting mad as hell for the first time in his career in that game against the Knicks. But you have watched all of, yes, that's right. You have watched all of Sabonis with the Kings. What have you liked about him? How's he fitting in with the new franchise? How is his skill set helping the Kings be a better team?
Welcome to Sacramento, Domantas Sabonis, where within less than a month you pick up your first career ejection. Welcome to basketball hell, my guy. No, it was fitting in so many ways to see him get ejected for the first time, and he got ejected for a good reason. He got ejected because he allowed something that has frustrated a whole hell of a lot of players here in Sacramento over the years, which is the Kings consistently making the same mistakes. And that was during a stretch where literally over a 3-game stretch, the Kings blew 2 19-point leads and a 20-point lead. Now, one of those they won, believe it or not. They blew a 19-point lead, won a game, then blew a 19-point lead, lost, and then the game that he got ejected, they blew a 20-point lead and lost. Now, the fact that he got a suspension for bumping the referee, I think is absurd. Like going back and watching it, it's not ridiculous. It's not over the top, especially when you have guys like Chris Paul and Julius Randle who did things significantly more severe. But hey, it's the Kings. I don't know if Pacers deal with this too, being in a small market and being kind of one of those throwaway teams. Maybe not as much of a throwaway team in the East as the Kings are in the West, because the Pacers have actually, been to the playoffs in the last decade. But overall, like it just, I thought it was silly. It was foolish. And anybody who didn't see the incident and just saw him get ejected and then suspended thinks, oh man, Sabonis went a little crazy. He really didn't. Like, he was frustrated in the moment. He was after the game, he stepped to the podium and was very honest about what frustrated him and didn't really talk about the officials at all, which I thought was interesting and also good. And I think Kings fans have been encouraged by a couple things. One of them being immediately he's expressed how much he enjoys being in Sacramento. But what I appreciated is he did an interview with Sam Amick of The Athletic, and there's something that he said in there that I think scared Kings fans, but to me, it was more encouraging. And it's what he said is he wants to stay here. He wants Sacramento to be his home, but things have to work out for that to happen. I like how honest that was, because if he had told me after how games have gone so far here, even if they're relatively meaningless at the end of another lost season, if he had told me, yeah, I'm 100% staying in Sacramento, I'm guaranteed this is where I'm going to finish out my career, I would have been calling BS right away. Like, I felt like he would be trying to convince himself more than he was trying to convince anybody else. The Kings know that they have to make it work here in order for him to re-sign, and he still has 2 more years under his contract. But that's off the court stuff. On the court, Sabonis has been, for the most part, a double-double machine. The biggest concern that I have is that we have not seen both Sabonis and Fox have superstar games at the same time. When Fox had his major performances, it was when Sabonis was out or Sabonis had a bad game. And then when Sabonis had his recent 30-point, 20-rebound explosion, the Kings lost by 30 to the Boston Celtics. Not that was Sabonis' fault. Fox didn't play in that game. When Sabonis scored over 30 points really early into his time here in Sacramento, that was an off night for De'Aaron. And his numbers have been overall up across the board since Tyrese Haliburton was traded away. So I still want to see the two of them. That's why I'm a little disappointed that neither are playing in this game and likely aren't playing too much together throughout the remainder of the season. I did a recent podcast on whether or not the Kings should shut them down, and it sounds like more people are leaning towards, just shut them down for the remainder of the season, protect them with their injuries that they're dealing with right now. But I still want to see the Kings get a head start on next season and see how good the two of them can be at the same time together. That being said, he's easily the best teammate De'Aaron Fox has ever had. And the Kings already rely upon him a lot before they are really cohesive on what kind of offense to run together. They have a lot of new faces outside of this Kings and Pacers trade they're trying to implement as well. So overall, it's been a huge positive, and there's a ton of excitement towards what that pairing can do next season and beyond. Although there's also apprehension too, Tony, because there's significant expectations for those two immediately next season. Unlike in Indiana, where I think there's optimism, at least from my read here across the country, there's optimism for what the Pacers can do. I think the Pacers are already getting their rebuild off to a head start because of the Tyrese Haliburton trade, but there's not an expectation for Tyrese to perform as the star starting game 1 next season.
That's correct. Tyrese did an interview in GQ where he was like, Yeah, the biggest difference between the teams is when I was with the Kings, they were like, "Yep, we're trying to make the playoffs in the play-in," and then I get traded to a team with the same record, and they're like, "Nope, we're rebuilding. We're not going to make the playoffs this year."
Yikes.
I thought that was a pretty interesting quote. Yeah, I have enjoyed Sabonis and Fox as a pairing, despite what you said. Like, I feel like they fit well together. I love the lefty funk. I also watched most of that Celtics game, which was hilarious because when Sabonis was in, they like played him even basically,
Mhm.
and he had this monster game, and he plays like 35, I forget, a lot of minutes, and they just get destroyed in like 10 minutes when he sat on the bench. So it didn't even look like it mattered in the end. But I do wish that they'd have a star game together, and that was something that happened a lot for the Pacers this year. Actually, is like there'd be games where Brogdon and Sabonis were both awesome, but in those games, everybody else would suck. And I was
Mm.
curious if there was actually a correlation that like for those two to be at their best, everybody else kind of has to sacrifice a little bit or be a little wonky. So I'm curious how they'll fit with the Kings when they both get that gelling together. But I think they can fit very well, and I have enjoyed the pairing, and I have enjoyed just seeing Sabonis on a little faster paced half court offense instead of a slower thing. I think that's been pretty good for him, and he's done a good job fitting in there. And it's also fascinating to see his stats are like identical
Mhm.
between his Pacers tenure this year and his Kings tenure this year, despite him playing so much different. I think that shows how much of a plug and play center he can really be.
Yeah, and to me that expresses consistency, which is something this
Yeah.
Kings team desperately needs. Now, there have also been a couple of games where it's like, man, it feels like Sabonis has played really well, and you look at the box score and you're like, he only had 5 rebounds. Like he had a couple non-double doubles recently where it's just like, I feel like I should be mad for those bad rebound numbers, but overall, the Kings either won the game or played really, really well, and Sabonis was a part of playing well. So, all right then. Like I think if anything, if I have any criticisms of Domas outside of like the 3-point shooting that we all wish would be better, I think it's just maybe it's finishing around the rim. Some games he does a really good job getting to the foul line. Other games he doesn't get to the foul line as much. I know that also kind of falls on officiating and not so much on him because he plays aggressive both ways. But he's really embraced the mainly pass first role that he has here. Not he's still a go-to scorer, don't get me wrong, and one of the top 2 scorers on the Kings, but the Kings run offenses through him so much, and the fact that he's so comfortable with that without playing in a established system that's had a lot of practice time together, that leaves me encouraged for the future. Of course, the Kings this offseason have a lot of work to do, and it's likely that the guy coaching him right now, and Alvin Gentry, is not going to be the guy coaching him come October later this year.
Yeah, Sabonis will have had like 7 coaches in 4 seasons if they switch coaches in Sacramento next year, which is
That sounds very Kings. 7 coaches in 4
well, that's
seasons.
the
Yeah.
Pacers' fault. They had 3 in 3 years. Then he'll have Gentry, and then someone. So okay, I guess it's 5 coaches in 4 years, but that's still crazy. Justin Holiday has. This is just a box score read. I've watched the Kings, but I don't want to speak for every game. It looks like he was really, really good for the Pacers last year. Really solid 40% 3-point shooter, pretty good team defender. This year, defense was a little worse, and he either shoots awesome from 3 or terrible with no in between. And I know the Kings really needed wings when they made this trade. How has he kind of fit in? Because he was actually a pretty key player for the Pacers this year and was an underrated part of their really successful benches the last couple seasons. But he clearly waned in impact throughout this season, and I'm curious how he's looked on another team.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Justin Holiday, and I think his first game as a King, he shot the ball well, plus he played well on the defensive end. He provides wing depth that this Kings team needs, and he's under contract next season. I fully expect Justin Holiday to be a King next season, although it also wouldn't surprise me if the Kings ended up attaching him as a sweetener to some kind of deal. Maybe they do that, but I'm a big fan of Justin Holiday. That being said, he has embraced the Buddy Hield role very well here in Sacramento, which is taking a high volume of threes and unfortunately missing a high volume of threes. Now, I don't necessarily see Justin Holiday chucking up a lot of bad shots like Buddy did, but I do see Justin missing a lot of good looks that you need to be hitting with the amount of space that you're getting, especially if you're going to be a starter. And he has been the starting 2 for the Kings basically every game that he's healthy. I think that's a mistake. I think if Justin Holiday is your starting 2 guard next season, no disrespect to him, the Kings haven't really improved unless they got a superstar or an all-star to play the 4 spot next to Sabonis, which we know how unrealistic that is. Possible, but pretty unrealistic. I like the idea of Dante DiVincenzo starting at the 2 that the Kings have right now, or even Davion Mitchell starting at the 2, because I think it's more likely that one of those 2 players is a long-term fit for this Kings team more than Justin Holiday is. In a recent game that Justin was out, DiVincenzo started and played really, really well. And then Holiday came back and immediately replaced DiVincenzo back in the starting lineup. Kings fans have soured on him pretty quickly. I don't think it has to do so much with him and his shooting as much as it has to do with there's players on this bench that we'd rather see getting those minutes and getting that starting nod, even if Holiday's minutes per game are typically lower than the bench players that are coming in and replacing him. So if you care about starting lineups as much as some Kings fans do, it's frustrating. If you don't, it's not the biggest deal in the world. I think Justin can be a nice role player for the Sacramento Kings. The problem is it feels like the Kings are trying to force him to be more than that right now, and he just hasn't been. Maybe he can be, but I have my doubts.
Perhaps I have this theory with some Pacers vets right now. Perhaps they're looking to play him with young guys to evaluate, like, okay, how does he fit with these guys? And if it's good, then they can say, great, we have him under contract next year, let's keep him around. And if it doesn't go well, they can think the opposite. That's kind of how I've been thinking with the Pacers, because they brought Duarte off the bench to give him the ball more and get him a ton of reps. And I think that's the right move because they know he's going to be on the team next year. So get him reps while you evaluate Buddy Hield, Malcolm Brogdon, whatever vet you pick with the starting five and whatever young guys happen to be on the floor. But there's a million ways to skin that cat. I don't want to be like, oh, the Kings are so dumb. Last guy in this trade, Jeremy Lamb. It seems like he is just, I thought when this happened that him and Thompson were just like they didn't have to include those guys. The salaries worked without them. So they just kind of were like, yeah, here. You know what I mean? With both of those guys, because they weren't really providing a ton of value. Like Lamb wasn't giving the Pacers a ton and Thompson wasn't giving the Kings anything. And on the flip sides, Thompson played 4 games in Indianapolis and Jeremy Lamb's played 8. I mean, it seems like he's not giving the Kings a ton, but again, I don't want to speak for Kings coverage.
I actually think Lamb has been better than I expected and maybe some fans expected. When he's played, he's had some good moments. But he was banged up for a little bit, had like a little small injury, nothing too serious, but something that kept him out for a little bit. And then since then, like he's just been an inconsistent appearance player. I wouldn't say his play has been inconsistent necessarily. When he has played, like I said, I thought he's been well enough not for him to stand out in a positive or a negative way, right? Like he hasn't played great enough for me to go, oh wow, Jeremy Lamb, holy crap. But he also hasn't played bad for me to go, oh God, get Jeremy Lamb out of the game. Like he's just been fine. And the Kings could use just fine consistently right. Based off of the ebbs and flows that they've had this season. But there are nights where he'll play and then other nights where it's like you forget that he's there and then you'll see a shot of him on the bench and go, oh yeah, Jeremy Lamb's on this team. Like, so I don't know if I can dig in and dissect too much of what he's doing. He is not under contract this year, and I imagine the Kings, unless they can get him for a super, super cheap deal, I imagine the Kings are going to look to spend their money elsewhere. So I don't think Lamb necessarily has that long of a future as a Sacramento King, but if the Kings were to re-sign him, like I said, on a low money deal, I don't think anybody here in Sacramento would be frustrated by that either.
That about matches the Jeremy Lamb experience this season in Indy. He was pretty good his first season. The injury totally derailed what he was able to do. Let's talk about the game and expectations for what's going to happen in a heated battle, the last potentially heated battle for both of these teams this season. But real quick, let's talk about the good folks over at Built Bar who are making the best tasting protein bars ever. I'm not just saying that. I've tried probably 24 flavors of them and absolutely love them. Do you have a favorite flavor, Matt?
Oh, yeah, mint brownie all the way. Although I am coming around more, I'm like a fruit-loving guy over like a chocolate-loving guy, so I am coming around more on like their orange and the chocolate raspberry bars, but mint brownie will always be king.
I'm a peanut butter brownie guy myself. I did love the mint brownie one. I heard the shamrock ones. I haven't tried them yet. The current seasonal one is really good.
Really good.
They are 100% covered in chocolate protein bars, all delicious, all super healthy. You can get their macros for the health straight on their website, but most of them have 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. It's basically a healthy, delicious candy bar. Most protein bars suck. Built Bar does not. Try them yourself. Go to Built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your order of Built Bars. That, again, a promo code again is LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. I sort of mentioned it earlier, Matt, but, obviously these players are the story of this game. But, just to pick a guy like De'Aaron Fox, if he was playing, like he played with Haliburton and Hield and Tristan Thompson. Now they're on the other side. And like on the Pacers side, like Brogdon played with Sabonis and Holiday and Lamb, and now he's seeing them on the other side. So like, they're a part of this too, even though they are not going to be the story written in the headlines or anything like that. So from this game in general, like everybody's going to be a little bit charged up. And I know that most of the lore will be gone if Fox and Sabonis don't play, which is looking extremely likely at this stage. But what kind of expectations, just zoomed out, no player-specific thing, do you have for this game?
Well, I will say full reason for Kings fans really being excited about this game narrative-wise has now fallen on the Indiana Pacers. Like, Kings fans are watching this game to see what Tyrese Haliburton does. Buddy Hield kind of a little bit too, although everything Buddy Hield does is going to be taken with a grain of salt by Kings fans. If he has a good game, people are going to go, ugh. And if he has a bad game, people are going to go, ha. So it is what it is when it comes to Buddy Hield. But Tyrese, like, Kings fans are gearing up to feel significant stabs to the heart anytime Tyrese does anything remotely good, which is basically every time he touches a basketball. So Kings fans are watching, prepared with a carton of ice cream and a pillow to hug, and just waiting for the end to come when it comes to what Tyrese does. And then, I mean, from a Kings perspective too, it's like, the biggest reason to watch right now, assuming Fox and Sabonis aren't playing, we know for a fact Sabonis isn't playing,
Fox is officially doubtful as of 5:30.
And it's, I mean, if there's such thing as highly doubtful, that's where Fox is at this point in time. Like, seeing how Davion Mitchell plays, Dante DiVincenzo plays, like, this is a showcase opportunity for some of the younger guys. That's really the reason to watch the Kings. Expectations for this game are, I'm hoping it's entertaining. What I'm hoping is we don't see two teams that recognize where they are in the draft lottery standings and play accordingly, although we know players don't care about tanking. So to me, the real reason to watch this game is to see what Tyrese Haliburton does. And unfortunately, that means that we're going to have to pay attention to at least some national media narrative of how the Kings continue to get torched by this trade and look terrible, even though I'd say both teams have won in their own right in this game. Now, long-term implications still to be determined here. But the real benefits of the Tyrese Haliburton trade are not going to be on display for the Kings in this game, versus on the Indiana Pacers side, you might get a complete showcase of the benefits. So that, at least those are my expectations.
Yeah, I wish Fox was playing, because part of me wishes that he could go against Haliburton and just be like,
Yes.
look what I can do by myself. You know, and
Yes.
like, I don't think he has to prove it. Like, he was awesome before Haliburton came into the league. And that's not to suggest Haliburton held him back or anything. I just that kind of stuff, I always wonder how players will interpret that. Same thing with Miles Turner. He's not going to play, but if he was playing, you know, just like, Domas, look at this thing. Like, it's not like beef. They don't hate each other. They just want to show that they're good players. You know, they're NBA players. They have pride. So those kind of storylines would have been so fun to me, and I'm really bummed they're missing from this game. But you know, the passion will still be there for a lot of guys on both sides, which always makes it fun. Like O'Shea Brissett, for example, going against his old teammates, and a guy in Justin Holiday who frequently was ahead of him in the rotation. Like will he be jazzed up to like go against him, for example? You know, there are a million options like that, and like the Kings made other trades, like you said, DiVincenzo's on their team now. He wasn't before. Like that, it's not personal for him, but I'm just really excited to watch these two teams like really have a game to care about. I know that sounds dumb, but as someone who hates that general idea of tanking and the structure of a league where just like losing on purpose is good, like it's so dumb to me in a sports landscape that that's a thing. Like these passionate games with these cool stories that make the basketball awesome are great to me. And so I'm really psyched about all those elements, even if some of them are taken away from us.
Yeah, that's where we're very, very similar, Tony, is that the idea of tanking is just disgusting in general. Plus, it's horrific to cover as from a media standpoint. So,
I guess, but like, you know, like that, like in the NFL, like getting the number one pick is a big deal. Like it's stupid that this is how it is in every sport. In baseball, the same way. Like I hate that it's like that. You know, just in sports in general and in the NBA specifically. Like you're saying, we run out of ways to say like Haliburton was good again, you know, for like 2 months at the end of the season.
Yeah, but to get a game this late in the season that does have some kind of narrative and some kind of meaning behind it is also a blessing. What we have to do, Tony, is you and I have to unite in our locked on abilities and somehow get in contact with the schedule makers and make sure that game one of next season is Kings and Pacers in some capacity, just so we can see a true version of these two teams going at it. We're not getting that in tonight's game, but that's okay. There's still going to be fun reasons, and for some Kings fans, probably painful reasons to watch. And I don't know, maybe Justin Holiday or Jeremy Lamb will do something to make the Pacers and their fan base regret something. I don't know, but if it's going to happen, it'll happen tonight.
It'll happen on I can't wait. I love these kind of games. I'm looking forward to it. Matt George, you go first. Where's your podcast? Where are you? Where can people find all your stuff?
Locked On Kings podcast. Come celebrate the misery with us. No, we try and have fun as much as possible.
Is that your official motto? Do you have like that written somewhere?
I probably should. I'll put it on a t-shirt. No, I mean, it's going to be 16 seasons without the playoffs, Tony. What the hell do you want me to say? 16 straight seasons without the playoffs. But maybe it won't be 17. We're expecting it not to be 17. So the offseason is really what Kings fans are gearing up for around here. But there's still games to be played. There's still narratives to hash out. a lot of decisions for the Kings to make going forward. So that's a lot of reason if you have any interest from a Pacer standpoint, what the Kings are doing, what the Kings are trying to do, a narrative about this team that's actually on the ground in Sacramento and not the national narrative that suggests that the Kings are completely regretting this trade, which they're not. You can get that at the Locked On Kings podcast. And then we just try and have as much fun as possible. You can also find me on Twitter at MattGeorgeSac. That's SAC. If you want to interact about Kings, Pacers, any kind of basketball, it's all welcome there. We try and have as much fun.
The Pacers are rebuilding for the first time in forever. There's a very good chance they finish with their worst winning percentage since the 1980s this season, which is crazy. And if you want to hear more about that, Locked On Pacers is the way to go. I'm on Twitter at TEastNBA, where I talk about the rebuilding Pacers and stuff they need to get better at because they, quite frankly, have sucked this season. But this game is going to be super fun. We'll, of course, be talking about it on our own shows. Tomorrow, Locked On Pacers, Locked On Kings. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today, and we'll see you tomorrow.